Welcome back to the MLS Net Boys podcast. How are you doing, Jacob?
Guess how I'm doing. Guess how I am doing.
I know how you're doing because you and I last night experienced supreme joy.
This is episode 10, I think. Double digits.
I
Maybe
don't
it's
even
not.
remember,
I think it's 10 actually. But every week we come on here and I get myself in the zone, like getting all the stats, and I just remember the Timbers losing. Because the only other game they won was that game that was postponed, so we didn't even talk about it on the show. So 8 weeks in, we can say with confidence, the Timbers won a game.
And it feels even better that it was against the Seattle Sounders.
I love, Seattle, pretty much a dynasty team the last decade in this league, but I love watching Seattle Sounders just completely self-implode and just lose control of a game like that.
Dude, all that talking we were doing about Gio last week, but you were completely right. He just has Brian Schmetzer's number. Because I think we talked about it after the game, that statistic that in the last 4 games, Timbers have beat Sounders and they've outscored them 11-2. That's insane.
I think since Gio took over, he's got 12 wins against Seattle, 6 losses, and there's been 2 draws. So I think Gio's beat him twice as much as they beat him. And yeah, say what you will about Gio, but that guy turns up for Seattle. I was telling Chase right after the game, I said, if Gio does go soon, they better just hire him just to come in and do a hype talk every year when they play the Sounders. Because I don't know what that guy does to his team against these guys, but love it.
I was so hyped after this game. I'm back in the Gio in chat, dude. Get that guy just
Get him what he
purely for
wants.
the Timbers and Seattle game, dude. That was, I don't know what it is. I don't know how he gets the guys fired up. Other than that 6-2 game, we'll just not talk about that.
I saw since that was the last time they beat us, so 4 straight games, and that's history. I'll take that 6-2 loss now if I knew we'd be beating them 4-1 at home, 3-0 in their house. Love it.
I would love it if we beat them. Keegan, or some Kevin Keegan history right there.
Sky Sports Retro.
Anyways, let's dive right into it. The scores of the week. It is officially wrapped up. LAFC and LA Galaxy just finished their games. So let's start at the top. What's the first game we got?
In order, we've got Charlotte hosting Colorado Rapids, 2-2 draw. Kamil Jazwiak gets another goal for Charlotte finally. But this one, Charlotte's going to be really disappointed. They had this result, and literally one of the last pieces of action of this game, they have an over-the-top ball. Colorado's attacking. Charlotte's goalkeeper goes to catch it, just fumbles the ball, and then Michael Barrios steals it completely through on goal. No goalkeeper, 6 yards out, slots it home. So, disappointing for Charlotte.
You love to see when a man with a nice mohawk just is turning up in the league. Michael Barrios, I always liked him when he played at FC Dallas. Dude was pretty electric on the ball, so good for him. Just turning up for Colorado finally.
Yep. Here's a game we had predictions on. A big matchup in the East. Columbus hosting New England. And 1-1 draw. Columbus with a goal at the last kick of the game pretty much. 90th plus 8th. You want to pronounce that name? Do you see it on there? Or
Zawadzki?
Sure.
Dude, that guy is my standout D mid in our FM save, actually. That guy is lights out for me. Sean Zawadzki.
Yeah, and we'll have a little more on the post-game antics about this from classic Bruce Arena. But, yeah, point apiece. Columbus leaves it late at home. Another, not to pile on Montreal, but, man, Montreal hosting DC. DC wins 1-0. Lewis O'Brien scores for DC his first goal from the club on loan from Nottingham Forest. 11 seconds into the half. Montreal, fresh off, I think what we can say is the worst trade I've ever seen in MLS.
Yeah, let's dive into that a little bit. That was so puzzling. As a just a league fan, I think everybody who kind of follows the league was really just confused when they saw that. So Montreal ends up they send Kamal Miller to Inter Miami along with it was $1.3 million and $1.5 million in GAM general allocation money, and in return they get Bryce Duke and who was the other player?
It was Ariel Lassiter, the striker.
So essentially, terrible trade. Kamal Miller, just an amazing like MLS center back, 25 years old, so he's not even in his prime as a center back yet.
One of the best in the league, I think,
Guy
for
was
sure.
lights out for Canada during their qualification for World Cup, and he's had maybe a month and a half of kind of rough form just recently, but that's to be expected with Montreal just completely gutting their team and then just playing a back three and expecting him to like hold it together. So just terrible business. I know Montreal has a lot of money to burn after that Ishmael Kone like selling and all this other stuff that they've just offloaded players. They brought in a ton of money, but what a terrible way to spend it, dude. Like Bryce Duke, great talent. I really liked him at Inter Miami, but if you're bringing him in to kind of fill the hole that Georgi Mihailovic left, and you're spending 1.5 million and giving away your best player, not a good look for your team.
The only logical explanations that I saw for this were all like tinfoil hat like levels of like conspiracies. They were talking about how like the league's maybe making them do this so like they have like enough cash in for Messi and Busquets. It'd be more for Busquets because Messi, they're just gonna do whatever they can to get him there. And I don't know. The only other thing was that Kamal Miller's expressed he wants to go to Europe, so maybe they know he like wants to be out, and they maybe know he would have left in the summer anyway, so they're trying to get what they can for him. If it was just the trade, I could have kind of like I still would have think it was a dumb move, but I would have saw the logic. But then sending $1.3 million, like what a waste.
That's it's insane, man.
I mean, but I think the first theory is right. I think Don Garber knows that Messi's going to be on that bench with Busquets because Bryce Duke and Ariel Lassiter are immovable out of that starting 11 once when the time comes. But
I can't like I just still can't wrap my head around it, and it's been about like a week since I found out about this signing, and I've still like I've seen a lot of like posts and whatnot about it, and I've kind of still been trying to wrap my head around it, and I just don't understand what they were thinking, especially with like how the league is. There isn't very many good domestic center backs within the league right now, and that's such like a invaluable asset to have as a team. So for Montreal just to just completely just let that go.
how depressing from last season. Second, they like could have honestly I believed in them that they could make it to MLS Cup, and then now, I think a lot of it has to do with Hernan Losada. Honestly, he was such a polarizing coach, and he demanded so much. I don't know if you saw that like article that came out. It was some player on DC like when Losada was at the helm, and when Losada got fired, a lot of the fans were upset. But like one of the players came out and was saying like, yeah, this guy like got like mad at me for like having like a bag of chips he saw like on my he said like the trainers went up to him like after a game and saw like he had some like not healthy food on his like Instagram picture of him and his wife like having a picnic or something, and they were like kind of getting mad at him for not being like up to the standard even though he like passes all the fitness tests and stuff. So honestly I wouldn't be surprised if Kamal Miller just was fed up of this
I
Hernan Losada.
I wouldn't doubt it. I'm not a fan of Hernan Lasada, and it's one of those guys that I think should be kind of making room for more like young, exciting coaches to come into the league. Um, I don't like kind of this like coach like merry-go-round you see within MLS that you almost kind of see in England sometimes with like the lower division teams. Like you see like the Roy Hodgsons, like the Sean Dyches, guys like that just kind of get passed around to these like lower level teams, but like that's one thing I really liked when Gio came to Portland is he had like kind of worked his way up. He was in the USL with like the Cosmos and then got his like chance, and it's exciting when you see a new exciting like young coach come up and try and prove himself rather than just like, oh man, we're going to just sign this guy that did very mediocre with DC United.
Yeah, that's it's exactly right. I am not a fan of that either. I feel like we didn't see it as much as in MLS before. I used to see it in England a bunch. Yeah, you got those guys who just get their teams in the relegation zones, then get fired, and then somehow get a mid-table job, like failing upward. And now
Frank
that
Lampard.
what a crazy saga that's been. But
I saw a stat that every team he's taken over for, the position they were in when he took over, he's finished like 1 or 2 spots below where they were at when he took over. Yet he's like still managed to like he went from like Derby to Chelsea to Everton and now he's back at Chelsea.
wow.
But this is an MLS show. We're not going to talk about mediocre British people who couldn't even handle the grit of MLS as a player.
On par though, because we were just about to go to NYCFC, and former New York City lad Frank
The
Lampard
retirement
is.
home of Frank Lampard and Andrea Pirlo.
That's right. New York City FC hosting at their home away from home, Citi Field, not Yankee Stadium, their other baseball stadium that they play in. 2-1 win over Nashville. Keaton Parks scores a nice volley, actually. Maxime Chanot gets on the board, and then Haney Mukhtar, consolation for Nashville.
Dude, it's like I said, I think I said this last week when we were talking about the Timbers, but it's true for Nashville too. Their whole game plan hinges on the first goal. Like, even when you look at the stats in this game, like, if you score the first goal and you score it early, and then you just let Nashville try and do anything, they are useless, dude. Like, if they can't just hit on the counter and give Hani Mukhtar the ball and just see what happens, they're useless. And, like, even with them going down early, they still didn't like, dominate possession because they don't know how to hold the ball. So, I don't know. Nashville, I love some of the guys on their team. It's just I hate the way they play.
Yeah, it's kind of hit or miss for them, it seems like. Good win for from New York City at home, though. So next up, exciting game, Toronto 2, Atlanta 2. Richie Larea with a nice strike for Toronto. Georgios Jumakis for Atlanta gets one of their goals. Atlanta's up 2-1, but Brandon Servania gets a goal at the death at the end of the game, freshly coming over from FC Dallas. What do you say?
How did this make you feel being the Toronto FC manager and our Football Manager 23 save?
So, I've been sucking at FM. I had no experience at this, and it was funny because I was just giving this guy a shout on our FM squad because he's kind of buried in the depth chart. I have Michael Bradley at CDM, obviously, because he's my best defender in game, but that guy has to be taken out at like the 50th minute every game because he's just exhausted. So I put in Brandon Servania, and yeah, he's done well for me in FM, so it was kind of cool to see him score in real life too. I got a goal from him in FM as well, so big week for him. Gets a goal in real life, gets a goal on the famed MLS Net Boys FM save. So,
yes, sir. Dude, couple interesting things about this game, though, is Thiago Almada still not back in the lineup, kind of showing how Atlanta really needs him if they want to be successful this year. Also, how do you think it was post-game Michael Bradley being benched by his own dad at Toronto? You think the drive home was awkward? You think they still ride together like when he was a kid, like ride together to the stadium?
It's bound to have happened sometimes. Honestly, I'm kind of surprised he's like been still that guy for them. He seems to have like that, not on the same level because I think he's regressed a lot more, but that Diego Chara kind of spot lockdown. He's just been that linchpin in the center mid forever, but I don't know. I like Bradley. I'm not a Bradley hater by any means. I think his end with the national team was disappointing. He took pretty much the brunt of like that 2017 non-qualification, and I've loved to see him do his thing with Toronto for so long. I wish he stayed in Europe longer, because it was cool to see him at a big club like Roma, but it was bound to happen. But I love that he still contributes, and he got like a goal like 2 weeks ago or something. So
little upsetting for you to not see Shane O'Neill get in the game as well, huh?
This dirty man right here I'm talking to, Chase, he sets up his Columbus Crew team on FM, and man, Shane O'Neill just took the I don't even know how to describe what happened. That guy fumbled the bag so hard, and Chase is out here winning 6-0 games in his FM save, like crushing teams. I was winless, so I was like terrified. And then we get to the game, not a super like eventful game, I feel like. And then Shane O'Neill misses two like runs by missing a header. Chase's guy scores twice, 2-0 for Chase. Like the exact same goal, 2 times in a row. My boys get fired up apparently. I made some tweaks at halftime. I score 2 goals to bring it back. Marshall Ruddy scores a worldie for me. And then we go right down to the other end of the pitch, and he has a P roller across that Shane O'Neill hits in his own net. And then the cherry on top was another long through ball. Shane O'Neill tries to like trap it with like his shins, goes off his leg, puts Cucho Hernandez through for the hat trick, ends up 4-2.
What a game, dude! That was I was
That was the
I
best.
was every other game I was just kind of letting my boys play, but for that game I got deep in the like strategy. Like our other friend that plays with us he's a big FM guy, and he was like, we've shared both our screens with him so he can jump in between and kind of see what's going on. And he jumped to my screen at one point, and he's just like, dude, what the heck? I didn't even know you could do that. I was in like the individual player instructions, and I was telling my guys like how to mark on like Bernadeschi, and I was telling them where to target their passes at. Good
This guy's
times.
doing combinations with the joystick I've never seen before, flicking the stick around, just making all these random changes. Another thing too that before we can stop talking about the video game simulator after this, but the whole reason Shane O'Neill was on the pitch for this was because my marquee center back signing I made at the beginning of the year got injured like 2 days before the training. So I tried to give him like one of those shot things to like get him ready for just the weekend. And then that didn't work either, so he was out. So just right when I played Chase.
Perfect timing. I'd sent somebody over to you guys' training ground to injure him.
I hate how we talked more about our FM game right there than we talked about DC United all year, probably. Or any of these teams. Or this next game. Austin, Vancouver, 0-0. I don't want to talk about this.
I don't know, man. I just feel so bad for Austin right now. Vancouver couldn't care less. I like to see when they have a high level of play. I like what they're building. Like I like their coach, and I
Wait a
like
minute.
that Simon Betcher or whatever his name is.
So you feel bad for Austin, who's this is their third year and they had like one of the best seasons of all time for like a new club, but Vancouver, who's been a
Dude,
mid team for like
you think I'm gonna
12 years,
you think
you
I'm
feel
gonna
bad for Austin?
you think I'm gonna care about a random Cascadia Cup irrelevant like contender? I don't care about Vancouver, and they beat us last week, so
That's true.
screw them. But I do like what Vancouver's building, and I like that it makes the West more competitive. I feel bad for Austin, dude, just being dumped out of Champions League and just look terrible in the league so far.
I kind of like when this happens too. Like it's like a fall from grace. Like looking forward to St. Louis's whenever that happens for real. Like Cincinnati is a team who it was the opposite. They were awful their first few years, so I like seeing them do good. LAFC, I would love to see them be miserable right now. Like those sort of teams who just start off pretty good. I like when they fall to grace. Atlanta's like kind of last crappy 2 seasons. Love it, dude. Atlanta was the new Seattle. They were just like miserably like annoying fans who just thought they were on the top of the world and like
It feels different with Austin though. Like they weren't that great their first season, and they built up something, and they have like a really fun style to watch. Plus they have Maxi Urruti. I like that he's kind of nailed down that like striker spot. And I love Maxi Urruti. I wish that guy would come back to Portland. But I don't know, it feels different because I completely agree with you. LAFC, I would love to see that team just do terrible in the league one year. Atlanta, it's fun to watch them fail. New York City FC is another one. Like all these like really really big money teams, whereas Austin's not like a big money team, you know. Like they kind of remind me a bit more of like a Portland or like kind of those like mid tier teams that like push up towards the top.
willingly putting us in the mid-tier
Dude,
category.
you can't deny it. Timbers are not like a top tier like market. We don't spend a ton of money.
The
We get
market,
ignored by the league. We get ignored by the media.
but we actually see we don't get like the coverage like Seattle gets, how they'll just fawn over us. But Portland, I feel like, does get a lot of media coverage compared. I'd say it's like LAFC definitely first, Atlanta, Seattle, the Galaxy, and then
New York City.
I don't know. I feel like it's kind of tied, honestly, until they. I feel like we're kind of like slightly behind them, and maybe yeah, New York City and Toronto kind of category.
And Miami, as soon as they get either Messi, or if they don't get Messi, they're gonna go in for some other random big
Like
name, and then it's
Griezmann.
just gonna be like everybody's gonna fawn over them.
Yeah,
It's yeah, I don't know. I guess I am like a little spoiled as a Timbers fan because we do get some coverage. Imagine just being like a Colorado
I
fan.
knew you were gonna say that. I knew as soon as you looked at me, you were gonna the words Colorado or Rapids was gonna
It was
come out
either
of your
gonna be
face.
I had like a little wheel spinning in my head, and it's gonna be either Colorado,
Houston,
RSL. I was gonna say San Jose.
yeah, they're quietly been pretty successful. You don't hear nothing, huh?
Yeah,
Moving on, Chicago to Philadelphia to Chicago at home, and disappointing for Chicago. Actually, they were up 2-0 at home to Philadelphia. Same thing they did earlier. They were up 2-0 at home against Cincinnati, and then they blew a 2-goal lead, and then they do the same thing to Philadelphia.
the thing is with Chicago though is their fans are probably way happier that they're at least getting games like this rather than the alternative. Like I feel as funny as it is, like I feel like Kai Kamara has like single handedly made this team relevant this year. Like he
Eighth
didn't he
place right
didn't
now.
he didn't score in this game, but I feel like just his presence and like his goal scoring ability in like the previous games has just fired this team up so much. And the fact that they don't have Shaqiri on the field has also just made them play way better.
That's a good point because I can't think of another player on Chicago who's like a veteran of the league like Kamara is. I feel like they don't have that experience. They've got like some like pieces, but it's hasn't been there. But yeah, Chicago, they're eighth place right now, but only only one loss on the season for Chicago. They're ahead of Toronto, Philadelphia, Red Bulls, Charlotte, Miami, Montreal. If you would have said that from like last year's Chicago Fire team, I feel like you'd be pretty impressed. But what a disappointing thing from Philly, fresh off of making it to the semifinals in Champions League.
Yeah, it's I don't know. Philly just seems like they kind of solely have their focus on Champions League right now.
Yeah.
Like I think with the expansion of the playoffs and the strength of their team, it's almost like Jim Curtin was just kind of like just forget the beginning of the season. Like especially after the supporter shield loss last year, like being tied on points with LAFC and then getting screwed over by like our weird rules in MLS. He's probably just like forget supporter shield. We're gonna make playoffs no matter what because it's just ninth place and up. So he's like, let's just focus on Champions League right now, and then no matter what, at the end of the season, I think they have so much strength they can put together a good enough run to make it in playoffs.
See, I I disagree with that like viewpoint. Like not I'm not saying you're wrong because I feel like that is they're kind of prioritizing that, but LAFC's like doing the same thing they are, and they're just going all out. They've yet to lose in the league, and I would imagine, especially since yeah they missed out on the Shield by that tiebreaker, and then because of that didn't host MLS Cup, and they didn't have that home field advantage. I would assume that would fire them up to be like, hey, we're gonna win every single game we can because it's kind of unheard of in MLS. If you prioritize one of those things, you usually fall in the other ones. Whereas like LAFC right now is kind of dominating everything, which you don't really see that often. I would assume that's where they're at, but I mean, we'll see by the end of the year.
Yeah, I don't know because it's like one of those things where you never know what the mood is in the locker room. Like you don't know where your players are at. Like guys like Kai Wagner who really expected a big move overseas and then didn't get it. Like coming back, it's kind of hard seeing where your guys like minds are at and like how you're gonna motivate them. So maybe that's where like they're finding their motivation is like, we lost in these like competitions last year, but we're gonna prove them wrong by proving that we're like the best on the continent, or I don't know. I agree though, like if it were me, like if I was a part of that team, I would be solely focused on like wanting to win the league. And if I was Jim Curtin, that's what I'd be putting my energy into. Like Champions League, the fact that it comes down to just a couple games is so hard to do. But throughout the league, I'd just be putting way more energy into that.
Yeah, I agree. So yeah, point apiece for this. We're gonna move on to our next game. FC Dallas beating Salt Lake 2-1. Jesus Ferreira with another goal. Dallas wins it though in the 88th minute. And kind of quietly, Dallas is in fourth place in the West. Only St. Louis, LAFC, and Seattle are ahead of them. So you don't really. This is another team you don't really hear much about, but quietly they're kind of putting stuff together.
I like this FC Dallas team, dude. I like the way they set up. They're just fun to watch, but something about this game that you don't see very often is Real Salt Lake with more than 50% possession. They had more possession than FC Dallas, dude. That does not happen very often. So, good on them. Also,
Good on them for not losing 4-0 like they were doing. Remember that stretch where they were losing 4-0?
yeah. Also, FC Dallas only had 4 shots with 2 on target and scored 2 goals this game. So,
That's what
just
you call efficient right there.
proving that they were just more clinical than Real Salt Lake. Real Salt Lake just I feel bad, dude. They just don't have the pieces there to really put like a just a good.
You feel about them how I always talk about like Chicago Fire and DC United. The club you just they're so forgettable.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm not like a Real Salt Lake fan by any means, but I don't know. It's just something about like these kind of middling teams in like MLS. I wish it was like similar to like other like American sports where it seems like every team has like one just like lights out like great player. Like Portland Trailblazers, for example, have like Damian Lillard. Like in all the terrible games they have, terrible seasons, they still have one guy that's just like lights out. But like when you look across
Justin
the
Merrim
league,
doesn't tick that box for you.
he didn't even play for them. Oh, he got subbed in. But it's just like I don't know, man. I know it's just a complete different sport, but
I
it's
know what
just
you mean.
depressing. It's just depressing when you see these teams that just all they're there is just they're just there to like make a push for ninth place and feed points to like the top 4 teams in their conference.
You know, they had that great run a couple years ago. I'll say that. They made it to the semifinals when nobody believed in them. And that's what makes those sorts of runs sweeter. But, you know, they've won an MLS Cup, which is something a lot of teams can't say in this league. So,
I'm also, as a Timbers fan, more scared of these teams than I am of like the top 4 teams because these are the teams that just like destroy the
kills our
Timbers.
season.
Yeah,
Yeah.
these are the teams where like Gio just gets it completely wrong and we just get like beaten down the same wing like 17 times and a half.
Seen that before. How about not an upset, but a kind of surprising one to me? Minnesota losing 2-1 Orlando City, and this was in Minnesota, so Minnesota losing at home.
Yet another late winner, dude. What a week for just late goals. But this isn't as surprising to me. Minnesota, they've had a solid start to the season. Surprisingly, I mean, with missing Reynoso and just not being at full strength, but Oscar Pareja just knows how to get his team pulling for him, dude. I really like the way this Orlando team has been playing. I like the way they've been set up, and I think as the season goes on, they're just going to kind of slowly improve to be better and better. Not going to be like pushing for anything insane, but I think they're definitely going to be in the playoffs and a team to look out for.
Yeah, they're Orlando's in seventh place in the East. They're only 6 points off the top spot, but they have a game in hand. So I think that's solid from Orlando, honestly. But we have to talk about it. We already kind of did, but the best game for us, at least, of the weekend was
Portland Timbers versus Seattle Sounders. We were at the game. What a game it was. Timbers just completely dominant for the last 20 minutes of the game. Like before then, I'd say first half, Timbers looked better at the very beginning. Sounders kind of found their flow. They dominated most of the first half. Timbers had a little bit of a push towards the end. And then second half is where everything popped off.
Yeah, and I don't know. I was so, we were at the game, but so I didn't see it on TV, but I watched the highlights after and then watching stuff while watching the LAFC LA game at halftime, and they went over this game, and you've got like Taylor Twellman, who I am a big fan of, but he's like saying how Seattle was completely dominant, how they look like the best team in the league. like in this game for 70 minutes of the game, and I just really disagree. I think first half was like somewhat even, honestly. I'd say Seattle probably had the edge. We had more shots and more like looks on goal, but theirs were more dangerous for sure. But then, yeah, second half comes out. Seattle looks like they're imposing the game. That first like 15, 20 minutes of the second half, yes, Seattle was in control. And Rui Diaz gets the goal. And I was pretty like not confident Portland would do anything because Seattle came out of halftime looking great. But yeah, the last 20 minutes, I don't see how a team can do that to you, score 4 goals in 18 minutes, and you could say they look like the best team in the league for most of that game.
Yeah, and when you look at like the game stats, like we had more shots than them. They kind of beat us on possession a little bit, but that's just comes down to like Gio's playing style. Like that's what he prefers. So I don't understand other than like it's kind of the narrative of the media. Like Sounders are a great team. Can't get that wrong. Like they're a great team. They have a lot of depth. So I just feel like that's just kind of the easy default for like these guys in the media is just
Just
to be like just to say like, oh, they're a great team, they dominated this game, but when like we were there, we watched it. Like they had some really good passing combinations. They had some like their goal was a great team goal. They had some really good moves, but it wasn't anything like it
it
didn't look like they were just dominating us.
it definitely wasn't a dominant game from Seattle. Like that's what I don't understand. I feel it feels kind of just like making a narrative to make a narrative, like for media purposes. But yeah, give Portland some flowers. Like I don't understand why like you fawn over Seattle the whole year, which rightfully so. Like they've been amazing this year. They've been dominant in other games, like last week against St. Louis. But to be like to make that narrative for this game just seems inaccurate, especially when you do have a dominant stretch from like Portland. Like let's talk about that. Like how does Seattle just implode like that? I think Schmetzer took off Leo Chu, and that was like a wrong move. I think
And
everybody
Rui
sees
Diaz.
that. And Rui Diaz, and he puts in Eber and Freddie Montero, and but more specifically the Leo Chu
Man
move.
just put on the retirement squad up front, dude.
Leo Chu comes out on their left wing, and then that was really when Mosquera kept going up the field. He had so much space, and we got to give credit foremost to Aspria for just pulling that bicycle kick out of the bag, and like that just completely woke up the team, the stadium.
Dude, kind of a little side note, but did you watch the slow mo replay they posted on like the Timbers Instagram of this?
Of course, I did.
You just see Alex Roldan jump for a header, spin backwards, his eyes are closed, and he's like screaming. And then you just see like Aspria's foot just go flying past his head and just like smack it into the goal.
Did he? I may be wrong, but didn't Roldan try to like cover his face? Like
Yeah,
he
he
got
tried to
pretend
act
like he
like he
got
got
hit in the
hit.
face.
Yeah.
Like they don't have a replay now.
Wouldn't have doubted if that sideline ref would have called it for him though.
But yeah, I don't know. For Portland, we're Portland fans. Hopefully this turns around our season. This is kind of what we've been waiting for. We're getting players healthy. Nias Goda gets a goal. His drought is over. Mosquera has a banger.
You're gonna just comb over my boy Nathan Fogasa?
He
Nathan
fin-
Fogasa, I think, was a huge like tide turning move for us when he came into the game. That guy was like pretty electric, bagged a goal, and then he also set up the goal for Nias Goda. Like, dude kind of came in and just was like the nightmare for like Jackson Reagan.
It was, yeah, and I think a more specific, definitely him, but I think Paredes too. You saw in transition how he was just completely outrunning Seattle's midfield in transition, and yeah, Fogasa and then also Paredes in the buildup. They were silky smooth. Even Nias Goda was nice with the 1-2s, which normally that's not like what we see from Nias Goda, but he was feeling it.
Yeah, it was interesting to see him actually drop in and try and get involved in build up play, which is what everybody who looks at him and everybody looks at how the Timbers play. It's like this guy would be so much more effective if he just tried to keep his back to goal, found pockets of space, and played the ball off for these guys that are way faster and then arrive late in the box. But he never has done that for the Timbers before.
And that's exactly how he scored today. Like that's literally who was his bread and butter last night. The only other time I can remember him doing that was in the MLS's back tournament him and Valeri were doing like similar stuff. They were playing in Ebovisi, I believe, and it was really fun to watch. So hopefully that gets his confidence back. For Seattle, though, let's like I don't know. I see a lot of fans upset because Portland's beat them 4 times in a row, but like you don't need to push the panic button if you're Seattle. Like it's just a blip on the radar. They'll play Minnesota at home next week, which Minnesota's a good team, but like that should be an easy win for them.
Yeah, Seattle. Like I said, there was like moments in that game where, even as a Timbers fan, like it was fun to watch how they were playing. Like similar to how Seattle probably seeing that bicycle kick, it sucked, but it's also like just as a fan of the game, it's like wow, that was amazing to watch. But I kind of elbowed you at one point when Seattle, they're already down 3 goals or something, but it was like late in the game, and we were still trying to press them to get more, and they were in their own half, kind of deep towards their corner, and they had 4 or 5 guys just checking to the ball, and they were just pinging like 1-2 touch passes around us, and they managed to like work their way out of like a really good press. Like just moments like that kind of prove to you that this team doesn't have to worry about anything. They have like the basics of how they want to play. They want to dominate the ball, and they do it well at times. It's just they just get outclassed by Gio Savarese and the boys in green, dude.
Yeah, I wish we could just talk about this game today and next week and the week after.
All the
But
way until June 2nd or whenever the next game is.
yeah, so that'll be that next Cascadia Cup game will be a big one for sure. But let's move on. San Jose hosting Kansas City. 3-0 win for the Earthquakes. Abobasi with a brace. And San Jose is looking good, but I want to focus on Kansas City because what an absolute nightmare start. They've got, I think, 2 points, 3 points to start the year, all from draws. I think it's the lowest point total that like an MLS team has had, or the second lowest like that I've seen in league history. So what a nightmare season so far.
5 losses, 3 draws. Is that right?
That's right.
That is rough. Only 11 goals scored in 8 games.
2 goals scored.
2 goals? Oh, that's right. 11 conceded. My bad.
2 goals scored, 11 conceded, -9. That is shocking.
I feel bad for them, but also I'm not a big like Sporting KC fan. I don't know why. I've never been a big fan of. I'm spacing his name right now. Their head coach,
Peter Vermees.
Peter Vermees. I don't understand how that guy's been in the job for so long without winning anything. When's the last time they won a trophy?
I want to say they won the Open Cup in like 2019 or 17 or something.
Yeah, the trophy that nobody cares about until it's like the semifinals.
I love the Open Cup, but no, you're right. I think he's definitely should have been phased out like by now. Like he makes some interesting. It always kind of surprises me. Kansas City's always rumored with or makes some interesting signings, like that whole Ronaldo saga. It didn't pan out, but the fact that they were in for that impressive to me. They got Winston Reed, like Alan Pulido, like an in-prime, like high-scoring Mexican striker who's been hurt, but I don't know. I think maybe he should stick around like FO front office position, but shouldn't be coach in my opinion. You're right.
So I just looked this up. He signed for Kansas City as a technical director in 2006 and was added to the coaching duties in 2009. So that guy's been there for well over a decade now.
Yeah, he's the longest by a long shot, I think, currently like appointed coach. Like he's had the longest tenure.
And he's had like credit to him for just sticking to like the same just philosophy. Like he's always like they were kind of the first team to kind of embody that like tiki taka like 4-3-3, but also they haven't won anything doing that. Man's played a 4-3-3 for a decade in MLS, done tiki taka, and hasn't done a single thing.
Don't discredit that 2013 MLS Cup, man.
What, they made a run to the final?
No, they won it.
Oh, that's right. I forgot.
They got that, and
for whatever reason, I thought RSL won that. It just
they beat
that out of my mind.
They beat RSL
and in penalties, right?
Yeah, in penalties. And I don't know. All
right. Man won an MLS Cup 10 years ago.
You know what's sad? Ours was only like 2 years after that, so it's been that long for us too. We made the final, I guess, but
we made the final twice since then.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm like the opposite of you. I really liked SKC's identity because it's like you said, they're a smaller market. Like they've worked well with what they've had for like their branding and their like engagement. And yeah, they had a lot of good years where it was like they were one of like the most fun to watch teams in the league. Like I think by a long shot. They always played like good, like attractive a game, but I think now it's just they got to change something.
It's gotten stale, and with the way the league has moved, like they're not keeping up with it. And I think they almost just need like to reinvent themselves. They need to drop Peter Vermees, or they need Peter Vermees to figure out how to just put some different numbers on the board so he can do a different formation. Like
They,
4-3-3 is not the only way to play soccer, dude.
they need Caleb Porter to come in and work a miracle there.
Caleb Porter to do the 4-2-3-1 that he played for 5 years in Portland.
But good win, San Jose.
Yeah, good on you, dude. Jeremy Abobasi popping up with 2 goals.
Another,
I love that man.
like we were saying, San Jose got 14 points on the season. They're in 5th place, and love to see it. Love to see it after, like, I'd say like a decade of just mediocrity from San Jose.
Give Crazy George something to celebrate.
It'll be
Iconic San Jose old man that jumps out of the drum or
jumps
whatever
out of the
it is.
drum and beats another smaller drum.
That's such a weird.
I don't know why that. What does that have to do with earthquakes?
I don't know, but it is weird that he breaks like a larger drum to come out of it and play a smaller drum.
Should I pull a Brian Schmetzer and just make fun of their mascot and pretend like I don't know his name?
Yeah,
like,
pretend like you don't know what he is and say he plays like a different instrument than what he does or
that
something.
timber guy, Timberman.
Like Timberman.
Sorry, Seattle, we don't.
Where's
have
Brian Schmetzer from? What a loser.
He's Brian Schmetzer is you know what I respect about him? He like cares about this.
Nothing.
No, he cares about that rivalry. Like he was talking about after the game, he was like, "Yeah, there was guys in like our locker room, like on the staff, like making jokes and like having a good time and smiling in the locker room." And Brian Schmetzer was like, "This is a rivalry. Like, what are we doing? Why aren't we like pissed off right now? Like, we lost to Portland like 4 games in a row." Like, he has the passion, but man, I don't know. I mean, I would do the same thing. I'd make little digs on Seattle as well, so I get it. Like how they have a marching band who plays at their games, or they used to have like a whale as a mascot, or when they released their tifo upside down, like you talked about last week, or the how. No, I'm gonna stop talking. Just
I
dissing Seattle.
really don't like Brian Schmetzer, dude. Just in general, I just really dislike the guy. Like, just some of the stuff he said about the Timbers, and then every time I've been to a game and I've watched him on the sideline, he just looks like a jerk. Like, I get it's like a rivalry, but like, dude, like for example, this past game against the Timbers, at one point, hard tackle on Mosquera, like one of our best players. He's down, holding his ankle. It's well after the play. They go on a counterattack, and then they like get in our half and they just start possessing the ball. Usually, I understand a counterattack, but when the game slows down and you don't have a clear chance, like they just keep passing the ball around. At that point, it's on you as a coach. Like, why do you not just kick the ball out and like have some respect for like another human being on the field? Like, that's where it kind of transcends like the rivalry.
You know, if it was vice versa, he would have been like complaining after the game. Because Gio, I feel like, we complain about Gio a lot for Portland, but he's always like one of the most sportsmanlike. Like even today, like one of the reporters or yesterday after the game asked him to comment about the officiating and if he thought it was unfair, and Gio was like, "No, I'm gonna decline. Like, I thought the referees did an okay job. Like." He's not going to be out complaining about refs, but Brian Schmetzer, yeah, I don't know what that was. Like, why not instruct your team to, like, play it out? Like, and it seems like Seattle's had, like, a weird amount of, like, meltdowns, like, from, like, in random games. Like, they kind of lose the plot of it. Their play on the pitch was a meltdown, obviously, because they let in 4 goals in less than 20 minutes. But there was that. There was last year they had, like, that red card up in Seattle, which changed the game. There was that classic game where they got like 4 red cards in the Open Cup. Like sometimes those guys just like I don't know what the locker room's like. But if things don't go exactly their way, they kind of seem unhinged sometimes.
That's what happens when your head coach played longer as a professional indoor soccer player than he did outdoors. Man played for the San Diego Sockers for 7 years, dude. What? I don't know. Freaking nutty professor looking guy.
I
What a weirdo.
Oh man, Seattle's like our third biggest market for our podcast, right?
Yeah, I know. I get that. We gave them all their flowers. They play great. They're a great team. They have a lot of talent. Everybody fawns over them. But their coach is a freaking weirdo, and I don't like him, dude. He's got weird glasses, weird hair, big old baldy. Like, got this receding hairline. Like, just commit to the bald, dude.
That's the difference between us and your corporate MLS media. We're gonna give credit where credit's due, like Seattle, and we're not just gonna talk about how the lesser team was completely dominant in a game they lost by 4-1 against their biggest rivals for the fourth game in a row.
Yeah, I don't know. I know I was all last week saying Gio out, but as a person, I love Gio, and he had a way better playing career than Brian Schmetzer.
Long live the Cascadia Cup, though. I think that's what we can all agree on.
Let's move on, dude. We were talking about a completely different game. We weren't even talking about Portland, Seattle, and then we went back to Seattle.
Is
I'm fired up, dude. I'm freaking
caught
fired
up on the Nutty Professor. All right. Here's a shocking game, actually. St. Louis 5 at home against Cincinnati. And St. Louis is back atop of the supporter shield because Cincinnati was. But since they just destroyed them at home, and obviously they deserved to completely win this game. They were all over Cincinnati. But this is the one that's going to get memed on online. Because when people watch St. Louis, this is the sort of stuff they think of. 57th minute, St. Louis player takes a shot outside the box, hits the bottom post. Goalkeeper for Cincinnati makes a dive for it, and then the ball ricochets off the post into the Cincinnati goalkeeper's back, flies right in the back of the net. MLS posted it and just commented FIFA goal.
I don't know what kind of freaking voodoo they're doing out in St. Louis, man, but everything just seems to be going their way, and they do not play like an attractive style. But I guess that's like credit to them, and just the beauty of this sport is that there is no one way to play it. Like, you can play this just weird chaos style that doesn't look super attractive, but meanwhile you're getting all these results and you're top of the league.
You don't think Cincinnati was the dominant team for 70 minutes in this game?
No, I'm not Taylor Twellman.
Yeah, I mean, what else can you say? Like, they had a couple blips. Like, they lost 2 in a row. One, they got blown out by Seattle. And, like, way to bounce back. Because a lot of newer teams, like Austin, when they came to the league, they started off the year not bad. But then they just had a poor, like, really long string of games. But St. Louis, they've got, like, some sort of, like, mojo. I don't know, like, credit to them. They got a good coaching staff, and they put it all together.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Like, I want to clarify, like, two things can be true at once. Like, St. Louis is a great team, but also I have my opinion of I just do not like watching them. I don't like them as a team. They're not fun. Like, I don't like the style of soccer they play. Jared Stroud, absolutely dislike that guy.
Kind of a banger, though. I don't know if you saw that goal, but I don't know.
No comment.
Here's another thing I'll disagree with. Yeah, so everybody likes to see, like, those, like a tiki-taka, like a just fun to watch passing sequence, but St. Louis is definitely chaotic, but they're scoring a lot of goals at least. Sometimes you see this sort of style, and it's like 1-0, 2-1, like, not a lot of goals, but I mean, these guys have the most goals scored in the league so far, so.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's one of those things. It's like they score a lot of goals, but the type of goals they're scoring are not exciting. Like, yeah, dude, you had the center back pass the ball to your best striker, and he just, like, slots it in the bottom corner while he's inside the 18. Whoop-de-doo. Like,
I don't know.
That's not fun to watch for me. It's like, yeah, you had a press, you won the ball up there, and you scored a goal. Like, as like a
you're making me defend St. Louis
as
here.
Like a true, like, somebody who just loves the sport, I understand like what's happening and I understand how they're creating those opportunities. And like as a coach myself, I will implement that same kind of thing, but like I won't just completely like hinge my whole game plan on that, you know?
I don't know. I mean, honestly, it seems one of those things for me. Like, if that's what we're having to criticize is that they don't do it the prettiest, and they're still top of the league, that's
No,
so impressive to
I
me.
know I can't say like they're not. I can't say they're not a good team, but
I
personally, I don't like it, and I'm going there in 2 weeks, and I don't want to see it happen to the Timbers again.
yeah, we'll see what happens with that one. That'll be interesting. I think that'll be one of our games of the week since you'll be going for that week. But last game of the week, and it just ended like an hour ago as we're recording this. El Trafico and LAFC winning 3-2 at LA Galaxy. Vela had a nice. It was that classic Carlos Vela just cutting in and just hitting it in the far side of the goal.
The Mexican Aryan Robin.
That's right. Tyler Boyd gets his first goal for the Galaxy, but this is just a weird game because the Galaxy supporters group is still kind of doing their boycott of Chris Klein, their president. So the atmosphere was kind of weird. LAFC fans, like they always do, traveled really well and were really loud, but
They traveled out of LA to Carson to go watch this game.
no, I mean, well, obviously they travel well there, but like they send like big groups to like far out places. Like I'm always pretty impressed with away days fans in MLS because over in Europe it's such a cakewalk to like go to a opposing team's game as compared to here. Like Portland, our closest rivalry, it's like a 4.5 hour drive for us to get
Yeah.
to their stadium. So I love
Yeah.
to see it.
Did you see the letter that their president sent out to like all their like season ticket holders?
I did, yeah.
What was your opinion on that? Because I had some like mixed feelings. Like I respect him sending a letter out, but also like the plan that they had and like this just kind of the stature of their club just didn't make sense to
It
me.
was kind of a low bar. He pretty much said if we don't like make the playoffs or like build on what we did last year or something like that, he'll like resign. Which, I mean, I don't know. At least I see he's communicating with fans, but I guess he kind of has to like in the position they're in. But I don't know. I think the like a lot of LA Galaxy fans are saying no, he has to go either way. But like, what if they turn it around? We've seen in MLS teams start like this, but then end up winning a cup. I think if they do that, like keep them in if they have a successful year. But I don't know. We'll see what happens, I guess. But I think it just depends on the results. Like it's just all results driven, and if they can't deliver, then sure.
It's like shocking what you find out when you kind of dig into where like LA Galaxy has been. Because, like, so in that letter, he talks about how when they hired Greg Vanney as the head coach, he had a 5-year plan. First year was to make playoffs. Second year, essentially same thing. But did you hear that, like, they didn't have a full-time scout until they hired Greg Vanney?
Seriously?
They didn't have a full-time scouting department until they hired Greg Vanney, which, so for anybody who's not, like, a huge MLS fan, LA Galaxy, whenever you talk about MLS to anybody like overseas, definitely the biggest team. They have the most championships. They have the biggest name because they brought David Beckham to the league. So everybody knows LA Galaxy. They were like just kind of the like,
model team.
yeah, like the model. Like they were the titan of the league for a long time. And just to find out that they've fallen off so far that they didn't even have like a full-time scout for their club until Greg Vanney came in, and they didn't have any sort of like real plan to like make playoffs or to be pushing, or like they tried a while back to do like a youth centric focus. And I don't know if you remember this, but they started playing like more of their youth players, but they did it in just the worst way possible. They just threw 7 of them on the field at once and then just watched them get demolished. And they're like, yeah, we're not going to play youth players anymore. And so it's just no real direction from LA Galaxy until all of a sudden now it's like they just started having direction last year. And now like everybody's like, dude, get this guy out of here. We hate our president. But where was like all this animosity years ago when there was no real direction?
Yeah, it was like 2016, I feel like, was the end. Because, like, you know, they won 3 cups from 2011 to 14. And then they made the playoffs the next 2 years. And then 2016, Bruce Arena left, and it was just garbage from them. They had Kurt Analfo, who was their USL team's coach, promoted up. And I think that's when that youth movement started. He maybe lasted a year and a half. I don't remember. He didn't do great. They hired, I forget how it's pronounced, but it's that Guillermo Barros guy, like the Argentinian coach. He was coach of Boca Juniors. That didn't really pan out. They had the whole Zlatan era, and they've definitely been overshadowed by this glitzy LAFC team who's like the talk of the town. But I don't know. When I like Eli Lesser from This Week in MLS says like you still go to LA and like people all over are still wearing LA Galaxy stuff. So like that name is still there, which is like I'm glad it hasn't completely demolished, but I don't know. One thing I'm not a huge fan of is like this is performance related and they're just like boycotting games and not showing up. That has to rub off on the players. Like why not support your team? Like make a statement, express something, like write a letter back, but like not supporting your team and going to games is one of my biggest pet peeves because like as a fan, that's literally what our job is to do. Like you go to a game, you support a team. If I was a player, why would I like play for you when you like you're mad at our president so you don't show up to cheer for us?
Yeah, it's especially like in a rivalry match like this that's so close. Like you're within the same town. Um, it's crazy because they have multiple different supporters groups opposed to like the Timbers just have the Timbers Army. They have like multiple.
I think it was 5. Yeah, I saw.
They have 5 different ones that announced they weren't going to go to the game, and a lot of them were saying it was going to be like very fitting to watch LAFC take over their stadium because LAFC's taken over their market. But I don't know. It's going back to what you're saying about ever since Bruce Arena left. I heard the guys on like Extra Time podcast were talking about this, but they said it's very similar to like Sir Alex Ferguson leaving Man United. Like it was more so a cult of his personality. Like Bruce Arena just led that club, and like it's his personality and his guidance that kept them afloat. And as soon as he left, they just have fallen off, like on a steady just decline. But I don't know. It's kind of sad to see LA Galaxy. They have like such a solid history, and they have such high expectations. And they're in like a really good area. I don't know why they aren't competing for the same players that LAFC are. Like they're in a great area. People all over the world, all these players, they know where LA is. Like they vacation there. So you would think they'd be able to pull in guys like Dennis Bouanga, guys like Carlos Vela, like they should be able to get guys like that, but instead they get just freaking retirement home Chicharito who's just barely able to get out on the field. And
Hey,
when
man.
they don't have Chicharito, they look terrible. Like Joveljic is great, but that's with like Chicharito taking up space.
Chicharito has been a solid signing for them. I think Douglas Costa, like
Terrible
that's
signing.
the embodiment of like the modern LA Galaxy DP. Like
That's what happens when you don't have a scouting department, dude. You just are like, this guy used to be really good in FIFA 3 years ago.
You got Dennis Bouanga on one side, and then of this rivalry, and then Douglas
Costa in the stands because he got a red card in the last game.
yeah. But that's this week in the league in MLS play.
Oh, man, I don't know why I'm getting so fired up about freaking LA Galaxy.
So next up, we're gonna do a new little segment.
This is something that Jacob and I have talked about in the past, but we're going to talk about some awards. There's awards within the league that get named after iconic people, like the Landon Donovan like Golden Boot Award, or like Coach of the Year is the Siggy Schmidt like Coach of the Year Award. So we've come up with some players that we think are kind of some cult heroes within the league that deserve to have some obscure awards named after them. And I'm going to lead it off. I'm going to go with our first one that I think is, to me...
Can I preface this by saying, yeah, these are more cult picks. These aren't like legit things we... like.
There isn't like a whole lot of stats for us to back this up, especially because it's just kind of early in the season. We just thought this was like fun to talk about. So this is kind of based off so far in the season, and also just like our like opinions we've already had before the season, if that makes sense. But first up, we have the Mike Petke Pettiest Coach Award. This this is named after Petke because of his shenanigans with the media when he showed up with like printed out pictures of a call that a referee missed or something.
The post game press conference, yeah. Some call happened at RSL when he was coach there, and my man, I respect the dedication because yeah, he prints out a bunch of like just screenshots of like the call that was missed or whatever, and then he just went on this loose cannon rant about how he would have printed more, but the printer was like broken or like it ran out of ink or something like that. So it's kind of it's a great MLS iceberg moment, which we'll get to later maybe. But this one today, it's a doubleheader. We already ragged on the guy enough, but he's come. We're bringing him back in. Brian Schmetzer. We're bringing him back out.
The Nutty Professor. Give it up for him. He has received the Petke Pettiest Coach Award for the first 8 weeks of the season.
And this is what you get for getting smacked 4-1 at your rival's house, and then just calling our mascot, that Timber guy, acting like he doesn't know when he's been a part of the rivalry for like 40 years.
Man used to play for Sounders, also was like the assistant coach forever, so he knows who are. So taking it back before we go on a rant about this too much, I think it was last year or the year before, somebody was asking him questions and he referred to our mascot, who's iconic. Most people in the league know our mascot, Timber Joey, who's a lumberjack. Legitimate lumberjack in real life aside from his job. And Brian Schmetzer pulls his little oblivious Nutty Professor, just they're lumberman or they're timberman or whatever. It's just, and he just dismisses him and starts ragging on our mascot out of all people, who's a great person that's involved in a lot of charities and does like all sorts of like hospital visits for like Make-A-Wish kids, and just great person. I've met him multiple times. Awesome guy.
Yeah, and this just goes also for him. Like you said, like he makes these little disses, which I think it's dumb, but like I kind of get it. Like he's just kind of trying to stir up some stuff. But man, this guy, when he loses, it's like, I feel like not very classy. Like there's a lot of coaches in the league, regardless of the result, they'll kind of own up to it and stuff. But this guy's just annoying sometimes, man.
But we've already talked about him enough, so let's move on to our other winner of the Petke Pettiest Coach Award.
This is a joint award today. Honestly, it should have gone to this second person because he was a lot more unhinged with the media. But Bruce Arena, so his team lets a 98th minute goal in, and he was complaining pretty much that there was 5 minutes added, but they scored in the 98th minute. So the timing was a little strange, but so first, he's kind of calling out his own player, and his own player, Dylan Barrero, Colombian international, gets sent off, and he's a young guy. So Bruce Arena goes, he's a young, immature player, and you're in a game with a referee that's also probably immature as well. So he just, quick little jab there. Next, though, he's talking about how the fourth official was he says the fourth official is useless at the end of the game, the entire game, and then for some reason she voiced her opinion 98 and a half minutes into the game. And he also goes on to say they're going to use their phony baloney standards of clear and obvious, like why does everything take so long? He just was unhinged just on the post-game media. So
dude, you love to see it. You love to see just Bruce Arena, because he's iconic for this. Like, most people know he's just not very friendly to the media, but to watch him just start just talking just crap about Chris Pinso, like a guy who's like a MLS like veteran referee. Guy's been around for like quite a few years in the league, but then he's talking about the fourth official Megan Mullen, and he just starts talking about how she has to like input her view on the game all of a sudden. I feel like fourth officials don't do a whole lot, honestly. They're just they're like the punching bag for the coaches to yell at when they're upset about something.
When they put up that board, they just get screamed at by.
Yeah, they're just there to kind of like walk out there, get yelled at by both coaches, and then get drinks thrown on them by the home fans when their team loses.
LAFC. No,
Anyways,
I'm just kidding.
let's
I wish Bruce Arena was this hyped when he was coaching our boys in Trinidad, but
eh, let's
I'm gonna bring that up. No, I'm not.
let's move on from that. We're gonna move on to our next award, and we have the Freddie Adu Wonder Kid Wasted Talent Award. This goes to just a guy who's an MLS player who's young, super hyped up. Everybody thinks he's going to be the next big thing. He's going to go to Europe. He's going to be this huge star, and then just absolutely throws it away. And this award goes to who, Jacob?
Efrain Alvarez from the LA Galaxy. I think he's like 20 now, which is crazy because
He's only 20.
he was breaking into the first team like 5 years ago. He's like 15. Same team as Zlatan Ibrahimovic. On Twitter and like on U.S. soccer circles, we're like fighting against Mexico soccer fans. Like, who's gonna get this guy because he's gonna carry your national team? Nope.
Nobody wants him anymore. Like, both national teams don't care about him. But like you said, even Zlatan came out in an interview and said that he's like one of the best youth players he's ever seen. His touch on the ball is amazing. But he has like a real problem with like professionalism. Like, he doesn't really seem to care about his professional career. You could tell when you like see as he's grown, like a lot of guys as they hit 20, they look like really strong and like fit. He's got not such a fit build about him. And he's never been like super professional, which is really sad to see a guy that when he's on, he's on. Like, he did it against the Timbers a couple years ago, just started banging shots from far out that were going off the post, like forcing our keeper to make great saves. Dude's a great talent, but absolutely wasted it. So for that reason, he is our Freddie Adu Wasted Talent Award.
I think his best moment in the league so far was that it was kind of a banger from outside the box. It was Charlotte's first ever home game where they broke the attendance record like with 70 plus thousand. And since
poor
then,
Charlotte, dude. Poor Charlotte. Just first home game, and the one guy has just been checked out for the past 5 years.
He turned it up there.
Pop up.
Who we got next? What's the next award?
Next award, we have the David Ochoa MLS Villain Award. If anybody remembers David Ochoa, very short-lived MLS, like any sort of relevancy.
My man popped off for 2.5 months in the league.
Man popped off to he was a goalkeeper for RSL during the playoffs in 2021 was the year that I think he really rose to relevancy. And that was when RSL made it to the conference finals and they beat Seattle by producing 0 shots on goal across 120 minutes. My man David Ochoa was time wasting from the first whistle. Every time he got the ball, he'd go to the ground, hold the ball. He was at Seattle, so he was just getting absolutely abused. He was like jeering the fans. Like,
I remember watching that. He was just like loving it. You kind of love to see players feed off of that negative energy. Another thing though he did, which kind of gave him that villain like title, was I think it was Minnesota. He was playing at Minnesota and he had a great game against them. Like, he gets the match ball like at the full-time whistle and just punts it into their supporter section. Like, not like he was trying to hit somebody specific. He just kind of kicks it up there. And Minnesota, like, were pissed off at this guy. Adrian Heath called him like a little boy in the press conference afterwards. And like he was a hated guy. I didn't think it was like that big of a deal, but he kind of rode that momentum, I feel like, and made himself a name.
He tried to do that after beating the Sounders. He tried to do the same thing in Portland, and we just slotted a few past him and made it to the MLS Cup final. But anyways, so that is who this award is named after. But the person we picked for the David Ochoa MLS Villain Award is none other than St. Louis's freaking little whiny baby boy, Jared Stroud.
You got to take the reins on this one. I'm not qualified to speak on this. Chase has a personal vendetta against Jared Stroud.
Listen here, dude. I freaking hate Jared Stroud. Man couldn't even get on the field for Austin FC. Just a failed MLS player. All of a sudden goes to this new team. Yeah, whatever. They know how to press. They know how to score some freaking little tap-in goals. But Jared Stroud, every time you watch this guy, it's like he spends more time just flapping his mouth at the referee. Dude just sitting there just whining about every little call. It's like, dude, shut up. You're up 4-1. Why are you crying right now? Like he just and like his body, like the way his stupid mannerisms. This guy is an MLS villain. I feel like every team, like most fans, I was the same way before we played St. Louis. Like you're like, oh, good on them. Like they're doing pretty good. And then once your team plays against them and you see how like they act and how they like just grind for fouls and they're just super annoying, you're just like, dude, I hate Jared Stroud. That guy is so annoying. He's just running around the field. He's like grabbing his jersey and like telling the ref like the guy was pulling on his jersey. He's doing like the whole like give him a card. Like he's doing that stupid gesture. Like just shut up. Just shut up, Jared Stroud.
And at the end of the day, he has to put on his jersey with a dog food company on the front.
Yeah, freaking Purina
Dog chow.
Purina freaking dog chow. Gosh, what a loser, man. I really dislike that guy a lot. And I think most people after their team plays against them, especially if you're there in person and like you can kind of see the whole picture and you see how he acts, he's without a doubt an MLS villain.
The way you describe him is like a 4-year-old nightmare, like
dude, he
misbehaved child.
He's like if you're refereeing like a U6 like soccer game and you have like those annoying parents that are yelling at you. Imagine you take like that energy and you put it into like a child. Like that's Jared Stroud.
It's a very unhealthy topic. Apparently, is Jared Stroud for the show.
Gosh, that guy annoys me so much. Let's move on.
Let's move on. This is one I came up with. Hits close to home for me because, as a big MLS fan, the Andrea Pirlo, aging European star who phones it in. Andrea Pirlo, he showed up and he didn't want to do anything but eat pizza and drink wine in New York. He did not want to play soccer. He scored one free kick goal, and then whatever was left of his legs just didn't seem to want to do anything. But as MLS is kind of phased out, we don't really have those sort of aging European players like we used to. And we have one here, and I want to preface this by saying I don't even think he's that bad. I think he's committed to his team. He just hasn't really performed like we expect. But Shaqiri for the Chicago Fire.
Xherdan Shaqiri, dude. They look better without him on the field. Sad to say, because he doesn't even seem like he's fully checked out. Like, he still seems somewhat invested, but yeah.
Believe he scored at the World Cup, too,
it's
couple months ago.
It's great to see like the fact that our league has kind of progressed beyond these just random aging European guys. Like remember when LA Galaxy's big signing was Ashley Cole? Like we're just gonna bring in like a random old English like left back and hope that he's gonna turn our season around. Like I'm so glad our league is beyond that, but this is kind of like the last like little phase of it. Like we have like a Shaqiri. I can't think of like another random European star. I guess like Chicharito was in Europe for a long time, but he doesn't feel like it because he's like a Mexican international, so he's like so tied in with like the North American soccer scene. Same with like Ache Ache and guys like that.
The only one who I was gonna pick, but he actually left this offseason was Alexander Pato, who I honestly forgot was even in the league. And he just came in, and he was another guy I don't think was bad. He was just hurt the whole time. He couldn't really make it anything of an impact for Orlando City.
Yeah, there isn't really anybody else. Like a few years ago, you had like your Steven Gerrards, your Schweinsteigers, you had like other guys that were still in the league, but Frank Lampard, Pirlo even, but we phased that out as a league, surprisingly.
And I think it's like I think a couple like are fine because you can see players who are bought in at the end of their career and can contribute, but it's just finding that balance and then not having to 100% rely on these signings, having a good mix and variety. How about our last? No, we got 2 more awards here.
We kind of do, yeah. The last one's like a quick one that we could run over, but second to last award. This is one that is just purely based on opinion of all things. And it's just like a cult player for me and Jacob, but this is the Darren Maddox, the player who draws the most penalties award. Darren Maddox, Vancouver just probably like legend at that point. I'd say like dude just was lights out for Vancouver for a long time. Came to Timbers, and every time we'd watch that guy was electric on the ball, but would never score. He would just bomb up the field and then just draw a penalty.
You do that thing where like you're in FIFA and you turn the opposite direction and go back the other way.
Yeah.
And he just dribbles straight into a giant center back who would chop him down.
And just draw a penalty. Dude was super fast and could jump really high for a guy that was like his height. But yeah, I guess this award more so comes down to like just a chaotic winger award.
Chaotic
Like,
winger who doesn't really have an end product.
This award is the Darren Maddox really fast guy who's chaotic and doesn't score goals award. And we're going to go ahead and give it to none other than Emmanuel Boateng, former LA Galaxy player, now a depth piece at New England. Just I don't know what he's even really doing anymore, honestly.
He came in this weekend. Another honorable mention I want to say is Kyrie Shelton. That guy big body, gets into these spots, no end product, dude.
Yeah.
And so we're talking about players like that, yeah, who just they have these moments on the ball where like, wow, this guy's really good. This was Asprilla for the longest time. Super like flashy on the ball, gets in the box, turnover every time. But Emmanuel Boateng, congratulations on the Darren Maddox Chaos Winger of the Year.
Emmanuel Boateng, come on the show, please. We would love to interview you about your most recent award. But moving on to our last award, this is going to be a quick one because we're kind of running low on time here. This is the Dairon Asprilla player who just turns it on at the end of the season. Everybody calls him Mr. November, Mr. October, whatever you want to call him, because MLS season just keeps just shifting wherever playoffs are at. But the guy who just absolutely turns it on at the end of the season. Dairon Asprilla award.
This guy is made for the big moment. And in the spirit of him just completely changing his team for the season with that bicycle kick, just this one's named after him and it goes to him because this guy just delivers in any big moment. You get him a game against Chicago Fire at home, you're not going to see anything. You give him a game where we need to win to make playoffs, a game against Seattle, anything like that. MLS championship, Dairon's going to score.
You know, it's only fitting that this award goes to Dairon right now. But later on in the season, towards the end of the year, when we start talking about like best 11, we start talking about other awards, it might not be him. But as of right now, Dairon Asprilla, come collect your Dairon Asprilla Best Player at the End of the Year award. And please come on the podcast.
Yep, we're just an hour south of Portland so come on the show, Dairon.
But I say that kind of wraps up our awards that we have. Running low on time. We were gonna do some MLS iceberg, but I think we should save that for next week, and we should just hop on into our match predictions for next week.
Match predictions. You wanna get us going?
First game, we got New York City FC versus FC Dallas. New York City FC is hosting. What do you think of this game, Jacob?
I'm gonna go FC Dallas. I'm gonna go 1-0 on the road.
1-0 on the road. I disagree.
Why?
I'm going to go New York City FC 2-1 solely because New York City FC starting to build some momentum and they have their super weird field. Like, I don't know if you've seen, but a lot of teams, they have to like train on a modified field to get ready for New York City FC because they have different dimensions.
Which of their 4 home
their
stadiums?
Weird Yankee Stadium, like super narrow, long field, which plays advantage to them, dude. Like they get used to playing on this weird field that not many teams are used to. So when they come to town, like they just don't know how to play. But moving on, next game we got the LA Galaxy versus Austin FC. I'm not sure. Austin's just in a terrible run of form here. LA Galaxy not looking that great either. This is just the tale of two terrible defenses, dude. Like just two sides of a coin that look exact. It's like if you flipped a coin and both sides were heads.
It's
Like
like
just terrible on both sides.
you got Austin, who's got Amro Tarek, who is not an adequate
Man's gonna
replacement
just freaking pull out the best volley of his life into his own net.
from 4 yards away from his goal. And then LA Galaxy's got Mabial's brother in defense, Chris Mavinga, who just plays the exact same way. Like a 34-year-old
just
past it defender.
gonna react 2 seconds late and just backheel it into his own net as well.
It's the classic thing with Mabial. Cross gets fizzled in. Mabial's the first guy in the post.
Man's out there doing TikTok dances in the box.
The ball hits like the inside of his heel and then like flies directly at our goalkeeper's face, and he has to either make a reactionary save or I don't know. I'm going, regardless of that, I'm going 2-0 LA Galaxy. I think they're going to be fired up after this El Tráfico loss.
I don't see there being much in it for either team. I'm gonna go 1-1. I was gonna just say a 0-0 draw because both offenses haven't looked that great, but I'm gonna say 1-1 because both defenses are so bad.
Who scores?
Preston Judd getting on the field for LA Galaxy, gonna get his first goal of the season. Austin FC, none other than what's his name?
John Gallagher.
No. Rigoni or Veroni or who's their random DP guy that hasn't done anything so far?
That guy doesn't score, remember? You told me he makes progressive carries per game.
Progressive carry straight into the box and slots it into the top left.
Hey, my man scored 1 penalty in the preseason. And
hey, man, don't discount penalty goals. Moving on, we have Atlanta hosting Chicago. What do you got for this game?
I'm a big Chicago Fire lover, but I think Atlanta at home, I don't know if Thiago Almada will be back, but I don't think Chicago's really going to be able to get it done here. I would absolutely love a Chicago upset here, but Atlanta's starting to look dangerous offensively, and I don't know. Even if Almada's not playing, Jumakas has been on target recently a lot. They've got just a lot of good pieces.
Yeah, I don't know, man. This is a tough one because I think a lot of this hinges on Thiago Almada, and I don't know if he's going to be back for this game or not. And I don't know, dude. I like the momentum that Chicago's building, and I could see this just being just a typical MLS game where Chicago goes to Atlanta. The freaking train horn is not doing much. You know, they aren't doing too much, just blowing of the train horn. I'm gonna go 2-1 Chicago. But I think it's gonna be left to late. I think Atlanta is probably gonna get an early goal, and I think Chicago's gonna have to build their way back into it. And Kai Kamara is gonna be huge, dude. I think Kai Kamara is gonna dunk on Miles Robertson.
So not only is Chicago winning this game, they're winning from a goal down. So Chicago is gonna come from a losing position and just dunk on Atlanta.
Absolutely.
I love it.
I think Kai Kamara, they're going to be down 1-0 at halftime. Kai Kamara is going to just tell their coach to sit down at halftime. He's going to give a just team talk of his lifetime, and they're going to pull the game back in the second half. But that's it for our score predictions. But I want to, real quick, before we end the podcast, we didn't go over our score predictions from last week. We went over the games, but we didn't talk about it. Last week, we predicted Colorado and New England. Jacob got the result correct without getting the scoreline correct, so that's 1 point for him. Timbers and Seattle, we were both incorrect with our predictions. Red Bulls and Houston, I predicted the scoreline completely correct. Jacob was wrong. So with our total points, I have leapt over Jacob for the first time. He's on 12 points. I am now on 13 points.
The first time Chase brings up the points prediction.
It only took me 8 weeks of the season to finally take him over. Here we go.
And we're actually never going to do that again. So no more score predictions. So.
I'm just going to predict scores on my own and just keep adding points to my own side.
Good job, Chase.
You have anything else you want to discuss? Anything that grinds your gears? Some MLS iceberg?
Brian Schmetzer, the Seattle Sounders, the city of Seattle, Raul Ruidiaz, marching bands.
Dude, imagine if like those like 2 people that view our podcast in Seattle are actually just like Brian Schmetzer's like wife and daughter or something. And we just spent this whole podcast just ragging on him. I'm sure he's probably a good dad or whatever he is. I don't know. Hate him as a coach.
You know what?
We should probably wrap this up.
We don't have enough. We have had too much Brian Schmetzer slander. Us Portland fans, we get one win over.
You mean 4 in a row, dude?
Over our rival. First actual good win of the season, and we're just unhinged on the podcast.
4 wins in a row, but we should probably wrap this up. Thank you for listening. Please email us
at mlsnetboys@gmail.com.
If you got any questions, concerns, if you want to make a case for why Brian Schmetzer isn't a terrible person or why Jared Stroud deserves a second chance, please let us know. But that's all I have today. You got anything else to say before we wrap it up, Jacob?
I think that's it. We'll see you guys next week for episode 11.
Keegan Hughes, come on the show.